All right, in the last section, we talked about supply and demand curves, and we came up with linear equations for supply and demand curves. Um, and there's a concept in economics called market equilibrium, and that's just the point at which the supply meets the demand. So if supply is greater than demand, we end up with surplus. So over here we'd have surplus, right? If the supply is greater than the demand, and if we've got surplus, then the price is going to go down and producers will produce less. Over here in this part of the curve, demand exceeds the supply, right? So we have shortage over here, shortage, right? And if that occurs, then the prices will go up, and then suppliers will supply more. So in pure competition, the idea is that the price will eventually settle to a point where the supply meets the demand. So if the price is too high, consumers will be reluctant to buy, and if the price is too low, the supplier will be reluctant to make the product available in the marketplace. Okay, so market equilibrium is the quantity produced is when the quantity produced is equal to the quantity demanded. All right, and the equilibrium point is the point where supply meets demand. Okay, so this x0 is the equilibrium quantity, the equilibrium quantity, and the P0 is, of course, the equilibrium price. Equilibrium price. Okay, so let's take a look at example 4. In example 4, it says that the management of Thermomaster, which manufactures an indoor-outdoor thermometer at its Mexico subsidiary, has determined that the demand equation for its product is that 5x plus 3p minus 30 equals 0, where p is the price of the thermometer in dollars, and x is the quantity demanded in units of 1,000. Okay, so that's important. Units of 1,000. Gotta make sure we remember that. The supply equation is this: 52x plus 30p, minus 30p plus 45 equals 0, where x is measured in thousands. Okay, so again, units of thousands. Okay, and the quantity, where x is the quantity the Thermomaster will make available in the market at p dollars each. Find the equilibrium quantity and price. All right. So we're basically trying to find the point of intersection of these two lines. We have a supply curve and a demand curve. This is our demand equation, right? This is our demand equation. And this is our supply equation. Okay. So we want to find the equilibrium quantity and price. So we want to figure out an x and a p value that satisfy both of these equations. Well, there's actually a couple different ways we could do this. Now, in the previous examples, we had, like y equals something or cost equals something, and we could just set those equations equal to each other. In this case, we've got two equations, two unknowns, and they're both equal to 0, so we could set them equal to each other, but then we have two unknowns, and that wouldn't really help us. So there's a couple different methods I'm going to show you that you could do this. One is by substitution and one is by elimination. So in substitution, we're going to take one of the equations and solve it for one of the variables. So for example, if I take this first one, 5x plus 3p minus 30 equals 0. What I want to do is either solve it for x or solve it for p. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to solve it for p. So I'm just going to subtract 5x from both sides. So I get minus 5x. And I'm going to add 30 to both sides. So this will be plus 30, right? So subtracting 5x from the left-hand side will just make 0 on the left-hand side. And then adding 30 will make that 0 on the left-hand side. Okay, so I've just subtracted 5x and added 30. And now I can just divide both sides by 3. So I get minus 5 thirds x plus 10. Okay, so now I have an equation for P. And what I can do is then substitute that in for P in the second equation. Okay, so you see I have P there. And instead of writing P, what I can write is this expression for P in terms of X. So let's take that 52X minus 30 times P, but instead of 30, instead of P, I'm going to write minus 5/3 X, 5/3 X plus 10, okay, in parentheses, right? Because I'm replacing P with that, and then I have plus 45 equals 0. All right, so now we've got an equation just in terms of X, and we should be able to solve for X now. So I'm going to distribute this 30 through the parentheses and use the distributive property. So I get 52X, and then minus 30 times a minus 5/3 is going to be a positive 50X, right? And then I'm going to take negative 30 times positive 10, and I get minus 300. And then I have this plus 45. So now we can combine like terms. So 52x plus 50x gives me 102x. Minus 300 plus 45 gives me a minus 255 equals 0. So now I'm going to add 255 to both sides. So 102x is equal to 255, and then if I divide both sides by 102, I get x is equal to 2.5. But I have to remember that that's in thousands, right? X is in thousands. It's in units of 1,000. So that's 2.5 thousand units. 1,000 units. Okay. So that's my equilibrium quantity. And now I need my equilibrium price. And to get that, I'm just going to go back up to this equation for P. This one right here for P, right? I have an equation for P, and if I just plug that X value in there, then I'll get the equilibrium price. So P is equal to minus 5/3 times X, which I know now is 2.5 thousand, and then plus 10. So that tells me I get 5.83 for my equilibrium price. Okay. Now, I want to show you another way that you can do this by elimination, which is kind of a nice way to do it. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it's nicer anyway. Because I noticed that I have these two equations, and the method of elimination, in the method of elimination, you can add or subtract the whole equations from each other in order to find its solution. So what I'm going to do, sometimes it's just better just to dive in and show you how this works. If I multiply that first equation by 10, okay, I'm noticing that I have a plus 3 here and I have a minus 30 here. So if I multiply that first equation by 10, then I'll end up with plus 30 there. So I'm just going to take the whole equation, both sides, multiply by 10. So I will get 50x plus 30p minus 300 equals 0. Just multiplying that whole equation by 10. Okay, and then I'm just going to copy the other equation down as it is. Minus 30p plus 45 equals 0. Okay. Now you can see that these are equal things. If I add equal things to each side of an equation, it's still true. So what I can do is just add these two equations together. And the reason I'm going to do that is because if I add 30p and minus 30p, that term goes away. So that's the goal of the method of elimination, is to eliminate one of the variables. All right. So if I do that, I'm just going to add like terms. So I have 50x plus 52x is 102x. The 30p minus 30p becomes 0. That was my goal, so that's why I multiplied the first one by 10. And then negative 300 plus 45 is a negative 255 equals 0. Okay, now I can solve for x. So I'm going to add 255 to both sides. 102x equals 255. And then if I divide both sides by 102, I get the same thing I got before, which is 2.5 thousand units. Units. Okay. And again, I can then use that in either one of these equations, the original equations, and determine the equilibrium price. So I'm just going to take the first one. I'm going to take 5 times the x value that I just found, 2.5, plus 3p minus 30 equals 0. And I'm just going to solve for p. So let's see. If I add 30 to both sides, I get 3p is equal to 30, and then minus 2.5 times 5 is 12.5, so minus 12.5. Okay, and then I can take those two quantities and subtract them and divide by 3, and I end up with 5.83, same as I got before. All right, so in the end, our answer is that the equilibrium quantity, is 2.5 thousand, which is the same as 2,500. Okay, and then the equilibrium price is $5.83. All right, so that's my answer right here. Either way, got it two different ways, either by elimination or by substitution, and got the same thing either way, which is good. All right, well, that's all I have for this lecture, and you should be able to look ahead at the discussion questions, and I'll see you in class.